Hello, listeners and fellow book lovers. Welcome to The Book Snug, a bi-weekly conversational podcast about books and the reading life. My name is Stephany.
And I'm Julia.
We're a mother and a daughter who love reading and talking about books, the ones we adore and the ones we don't. We're delighted you're here, so grab your favorite hot drink or ice-cold beverage and settle in for another cozy, bookish chat.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, Julia.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Did you have a good day, I guess, because we're recording in the evening?
I did. I had a very good day. I taught this morning, took care of some errands this afternoon, and I'm ready to talk books.
Good.
How about you?
Oh, well, I have a weekend getaway that I'm looking forward to. So work is a little bit more manageable.
Right, because you have something to look forward to.
Right.
I think you always need to have something to look forward to in life.
This is true. This is true. Hello, friends and listeners. If you are tuning into this episode, you're probably wondering, why is the title different than what we said we were going to talk about?
Right. We were going to do unpopular opinions and ride the negativity train a little bit further down the track.
Well, some behind the scenes for you. We did try that.
We did.
It did get a little negative.
Yes.
And it didn't stay on track.
Right.
So.
And we weren't very happy with the results.
No. And I wasn't feeling grand, and it kind of really came across in the recording.
Right. It would not have been a fun chapter to listen to,
no,
I don't think.
I was a little extra spiky because I wasn't feeling well. So we're retrying things. We might revisit that topic in the future.
Yes.
But as we were kind of brainstorming how we wanted to fill this space, we kind of both came to the realization that we've had really good reading years so far.
Yeah. Fantastic.
And we realized that there were some books that we wanted to talk about that we knew that we weren't going to put into our quarterly review, which is coming up.
Because we couldn't fit them all in.
Right. So we decided that we would take some time and chat about those books here this evening.
Yeah.
Before we dive into that, though, drinking anything exciting?
Today it's just water, ice water. It's toasty outside today.
It is.
For the beginning of March in South Central Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've just been extra thirsty today.
I know.
And water is satisfying me.
Well, yes, water across the board tonight for both of us to drink. So, sorry, not sharing any teas or anything.
Yeah, no interesting teas. I even bought a few new ones, but we'll have to wait. Yes, we'll have to wait and share those another time.
Okay. Well, I think we should just go ahead and jump right into our books.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. How many do you have to share with us?
I'm bringing 4 books to the show. I actually could have brought more, but I'm just going to do 4 because I don't want to go over our hour time. We've been struggling with that, keeping things to an hour limit. So
this is why we have a podcast. We like to talk about books.
Right. I have 4 books to talk about. These are all great books that I really, really enjoyed, but they weren't quite like cream of the crop or a sleeper hit. So I'm really happy to be talking about them now because there's a lot of buzz for some of these books. I think the first book I'm going to talk about, I mentioned in our episode where we were discussing our most anticipated upcoming releases.
Oh, sure.
I think that was about a month ago we released that chapter. Sure. This book is Everyone on This Train is a Suspect by Benjamin Stevenson. I listened to this book. This is the second book in a series called the Ernest Cunningham series. It's a murder mystery series. I listened to the first book and enjoyed it so much that I decided to listen to the second one too for that experience. The narrators are Barton, Welch, and Megan Smart. Like I said, this is a second book in a series. I was really anticipating its release. I think it came out in February, maybe the end of January. Now I can't remember the release date. But this series and this second book focuses on a man named Ernest Cunningham, who is a writer of ebooks on how to write murder mysteries. And he narrates in first person these stories, and he breaks the fourth wall all the time talking to the reader. And he does it in a very specific way in that he is telling the reader what to look for, what the expectations are for a mystery. A good mystery writer will do certain things and will refrain from doing other things. So while you're reading this real murder mystery, you're getting all this meta information about the genre of murder mystery. I enjoyed this book exactly like I thought it was going to. It just met my expectations in every way. And that is what made it so good for me, because I was looking forward to it. I was hoping it would be something, and it was exactly that. So in this second book, everyone is on a train. It's an author kind of like festival, writing festival, book festival, and it's all mystery writers. And then there are people who love reading the mysteries, and there are editors and publishers all on the train. So they're all together. Ernest is there because he actually wrote a book about his experiences in the first book of this series. So the things that happened in Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, he took that and wrote a book about it. And so that's why he was invited to come to this writers' conference,
this
whatever
is
it is.
meta.
Yeah, very. So he's on the train with all of these other mystery writers, and they all write very specific subgenres of the genre. Okay. So you have the thriller, you have the medical mystery thriller, you have the law-focused murder mystery writer, and so on. And then you have this really famous mystery writer that everybody loves, somebody like James Patterson or something like that. Sure. Anyway, they all get together, somebody is murdered, and shenanigans ensue. And it goes from there. And it is just so much fun. I love how Benjamin Stevenson writes. He's funny. His characters are quirky. His main character, Ernest, is kind of, I don't want to say bumbling, but he does makes poor decisions. He makes some mistakes, and he comes across as being kind of like a doofus. But really, he's extremely observant, and he's very smart, and he deduces things, and he figured out the mystery before anyone else in this book. So it's just so much fun. I highly recommend it on audio. And the ending is a little bit over the top, but I think that's meta, because a lot of times in thrillers, especially, the endings are just crazy.
Yeah.
So anyway, if you like mystery at all and you are okay with kind of silly humor in your books, this is a good one to try. I recommend that you start with the first in the series called Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone. But this second one is just as good, and I enjoyed it just as much.
I recently bought Everyone in My Family Has Killed Somebody, and I'm so excited to start it. It's just on the back burner for now, but I can't wait to dive right into it.
I hope you enjoy it. I just want to stress that the humor annoys some people.
Okay.
But I am not annoyed by it. I just think it's a good time.
Sure. Okay.
How about you, Julia? Tell us about a book that was really good that you read.
So, as I was looking over my list, what I was finding was that the books that were absolutely amazing and spectacular have made it on to our quarterly review. And then looking at what was left, they're not necessarily books that I ranked very, very highly, but have left very interesting, like, shadows or prints.
They're sitting in your brain pretty hard. Yeah.
So I will say that if you look up some of these books, you're not going to see 4 stars on Goodreads or 3.5 stars on Goodreads. Yeah. One of these barely even breaks 2.5. But they're books that have just like gotten in my brain and won't get out.
Yeah. Hey, reading is individual. If they impacted you, they impacted you.
Yeah.
You don't have to
this is true.
Defend that.
This is true. I just wanted to put a caveat if I sound a little bit more Debbie Downer than some of the books that you talk about because of how I ended up rating them versus the impact that they've had on me.
Okay. That's great. Now I'm really curious. So tell us about your first book.
Yes. So the first book is called The Scribe by Matthew Guinn. I think that's how you say his last name. This is the very first book that I read this year.
Okay.
And in full honesty, the copy that I read was an early reader copy that I'd gotten at a book sale. So I don't know if the editing that was done between that book and when it was released maybe was a little bit better, because I didn't find the writing to be spectacular.
Okay.
Like the actual grammatical structure of the story.
Mm-hmm.
However, this story is about a detective called Thomas Canby, who is called back into Atlanta in preparation for the 1881 International Cotton Exposition. And the history behind this is that they were trying to do something similar to the World Fair in help bring Atlanta back up after it was destroyed in the Civil War.
After the post-Civil War.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
not after the post-Civil War, post-Civil War.
Because I think it was General Sherman who went through and burned all the towns that he was through. Yeah. And so this Cotton Exposition was kind of trying to help Atlanta come back to life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this detective, Canby, is called back in because murders begin to happen that are unique and interesting, and Canby is really the only one who can solve them. They're generally racial in nature, these crimes. And so this book examines what the racial context was like at this time. I will say the book becomes very gritty, very fast, and takes some very, very dark, unexpected turns.
Mm-hmm.
And does not shy away from details in the murder scenes, which is not normally something that I read. But I found this book to be a very fast read because the atmosphere was done very well. I felt like I was in gritty post-Civil War Atlanta in the dark places, like they were in a I have the slang word in my head, and that's not the one I want to use.
What's the slang word?
Where madams and
a brothel?
Yes, that's the word I was looking for. The other word I just don't feel that I want to say at all. But the details of the brothel that are just gritty and just rough, or in the glittery places where the high businessmen of Atlanta were hanging out. The atmosphere was done very well, so that I felt very immersed in what was happening in the story.
Okay.
What makes this book also stand out for me was I get awful motion sickness in a vehicle. Like I can't read, I can't be on my phone. Like I have maybe 2 seconds if I need to search something up before I start to feel really gross. And we went down to Florida at the beginning of the year, and I was able to read this book almost front cover to back cover while in the car, not motion sick at all. And I haven't been able to do that since.
I'm amazed because I can't even think about doing that without feeling sick in my stomach.
Right.
Yeah.
It was the wildest experience.
I was going to say, what was it about the book?
I have no idea. Maybe I had just eaten a really good breakfast, or I had slept really, like, I don't know, but I have dealt with car sickness my entire life, and to have been able to read a full book on what is a very, very long drive for us down to Florida.
Yes.
Was just mind boggling.
Okay.
For me. So there's that. There's that first book.
Is this a fiction or a nonfiction?
So it is a fiction, but it is based on real people.
Okay.
So Thomas Canby, I believe he's a real person, or he's based on a real person. Regardless, in the book, he gets what are they calling him? He's partnered with an officer named Cyrus Underwood, and Cyrus Underwood is actually Atlanta's first African-American police officer.
Okay.
So there's true historical, like actual legit things happen. Like the Cotton Exposition was an actual thing that happened. So there are like true markers of time and people in here. Mm-hmm. But I think this is just an exploration of what might have happened with some of the sources that we have from Cyrus Underwood and the other things going on at that time. Okay, that was a very gritty start to my list. Do you have something a little bit lighter?
Well, I was just sitting here thinking that we must have been traveling down the same road for picking books, because the next book I want to talk about is The Frozen River by Ariel Lawhon, who tends to write about women in history.
Okay.
And she writes fictional accounts of their lives.
Sure.
So she wrote Codename Helene, which I loved, which was about a spy in the Second World War. Mm-hmm. And this story is about a midwife who lived in the second half of the 1700s and then into the early part of the 1800s. Sorry. She lived in Maine, in Hallowell, Maine, and she kept a diary, which you can read. I think it's been printed.
Okay.
It's hard to get a hold of, but it is available. Sure. Ariel Lawhon uses excerpts from the diary in her book.
Oh, good.
And she explains in her author's note that some of the excerpts she kind of melded together to make the story flow better. But it is the story of this midwife named Martha Ballard. She is known for never having lost a mother in childbirth. She becomes a witness for a woman who claims that 2 men raped her. One of the men is a very prominent gentleman in their village, in their town, and in the area. And the other gentleman is found drowned in the river.
Oh.
But when they pull him out, they realize that he was beaten and hanged before he was thrown in the river. So this book is about a rape case, and it is also about a murder investigation. I was captivated by this story, not only because of the rape investigation and the trials that took place with that. The murder mystery as well was interesting. But Ariel Lawhon wrote about Martha Ballard, about her experience as a midwife, her experience as a woman in the late 1700s, her relationship with her husband, which was just wonderful, her family dynamics, the dynamics in the village, how women were treated differently than men when there were pregnancies outside of wedlock.
Oh, sure.
Women could be jailed. They would have to pay a fine if they wouldn't name the man who was the father of their child. So unsurprisingly, women were second-class citizens, but it was just an interesting investigation into that. Most of the characters and the setting were real, like they were real people at one time. And so it was interesting to read how Ariel Lawhon represented them in the book. The setting was fascinating. It was a frigid, cold winter, and that just kind of really impacted the feel of the story.
Sure.
She's a great writer. I just really, really enjoyed it. It was a propulsive drama, plus I loved the historical aspect. The only reason I did not give this 5 stars is because it's written in a very modern way. A lot of modern sensibilities related to extramarital sex, relationships between men and women. I'm just not sure that women in the 1700s really thought like Ariel was presenting it here through Martha. So that and it seemed like everyone in the village got pregnant outside of marriage, which I'm not sure that was true too in the late 1700s, but I can't say for sure. So maybe it is true. I loved it. I thought it was great. I just had a couple little niggly things that kept it from being a 5-star for me. This book is beloved, though, I'm telling you. If you go on Goodreads, the ratings are way above 4 stars.
Okay.
So it was very good. I would recommend that you read it in the wintertime, though, especially if you are a seasonal reader where you like to read cold books in the cold times, then save this for next winter.
Sure. Yeah, and I have found recently that I love books about real women who existed, and it's people putting their stories together. So in Marriage Portrait with Lucrezia de Medici, or with Island Queen with Miss Dolly, these women that like are kind of forgotten, and having somebody put words to their story. I've been finding that I really like stories like that.
Yeah, especially with this, when you read the excerpts from her diary in the book, they're dry. Like you get an impression that this is a woman, but you don't get a real sense of her character. And so the author for this book just did a great job of making her a real 3-dimensional, well-rounded character. And I can't stress enough how much I loved Martha's husband, Ephraim, and their relationship together. They are middle-aged in this book, and they still like each other pretty much a lot. So it was good. I recommend it. Yeah, if you like historical fiction, this is a good one. Tell us about another good book, Julia.
Yes. The next one on my list is The 100-Year-Old Man Who Jumped Out His Window and Disappeared by Jonas Jonasson.
Okay. I'd like to hear about this because I've seen it around, never read it.
I will say, I didn't think of this till right now, so I'm totally going to butcher the title and the author, but I read the The Secret Diary of Hendrik Groen, the 83-and-a-half-year-old, something like that. And I forget who wrote it.
We'll put it in the show notes.
But I read that first before this, and I will say I am partial to that one.
Okay.
I feel that the humor is done better in that one.
Okay.
But what is interesting about this story, it's kind of told in a two-parter. Okay. Alan Carlson is our main character, and the book starts off with him on the morning of his 100th birthday. A whole party is being planned in the retirement home for him, and about 45 minutes before they come to get him, he just opens up the window and walks out of his bedroom.
Did he not want to go with them?
No, he didn't want to. He just, the retirement lady business, the director, he has choice words for her. So every time she comes up in the story, it's choice words. And he gets very mad that she won't let him drink whenever he wants, and he has to go to the store to pick up his alcohol. Like it's a whole thing. Yeah. But anyway.
So he's kind of crotchety.
Right. He's crotchety. And honestly, reading this, because of my line of work, I think he might be a little bit on the spectrum. Just very logical and not like just not seeing things how they're supposed to be put together.
Yeah.
Anyway, from jumping out the window, he leaves with his house slippers on and $20 in his pocket, and he ends up at the bus station, ends up tangled in with a gang who's making a drug deal, steals a suitcase full of money, and takes off from there.
Okay. So he has adventures?
He has adventures. While this first part of the story is playing out, you're also getting cuts to when he was younger. And through his stories of being a young man, you learn that he had very specific interests that allowed him to get very specific jobs. That from there led him to meeting almost every single world leader between the 40s and the 80s.
Okay. So almost like a Forrest Gump kind of story?
Yeah. That's a good comparison. I actually found that I enjoyed the older parts of Alan's story of how he moved from all over the place, like from Mao Zedong and Stalin and like just all over the place. I found that to be a little bit more interesting than the present day story.
Okay.
What I really liked about this was that I couldn't predict what was going to happen. It just had reached a level of absurdity that there was no way that I could have ever guessed. There's an elephant in the story at one point. It's just wild and bonkers. I didn't rate this one very highly because quite a few people die in the story, and I feel that it's not. This is what makes me think that perhaps there's Alan is written in such a way that makes I don't think the author is this way. I think he's writing the story to feel a little flat. But in terms of the people who lost their lives, some at the hands of Alan, it feels very much like, oops, that happened, and they just keep moving instead of like, oh, there are serious consequences to this. All right. And I just found that to be a little off-putting at times. But the story itself was very interesting. It was also interesting that the author, whenever anybody speaks, it's not in quotation marks, it's just a hyphen, and then it's the line of text.
Do you think, is this a book in translation? Do you know? Do you think it has something to do with the way it's translated?
Perhaps. But The Secret Diary by Hendrik Groen was also translated. And I just found that the humor and the reconciliation of what it means to be older to be much more soft-hearted, I guess, than in this one. All of that to say, this was a fun adventure story.
You enjoyed it?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Okay. What else do you have on your list, Mom?
Well, March is March Mystery Madness and also Middle Grade March on BookTube. And if you've spent any time here, friends, you know that I'm a little bit crazy about BookTube. The first book that I picked up for March was Premeditated Myrtle, Myrtle, a girl's name, written by Elizabeth Bunce. This is a middle grade fiction that is also a murder mystery. So it ticks all the boxes. I just finished this yesterday, and I knew I wanted to talk about this book because it is so delightful and clever. It focuses on a 12-year-old girl who is a young lady of quality. She lives with her father and her governess in Swinburne, which is a little village in England. She is very smart. Her father is a lawyer. Her mother, who passed away a couple years earlier, was a physician, a medical student. And so Myrtle reads all her dad's law books. She reads her mom's medical books. And she has become obsessed with criminal science, toxicology, all of the newest things that are going on in criminal investigation. Like in the late 1800s, they were trying to decide if fingerprinting was useful or not. Poisoning, they were getting into the toxicology as far as blood work related to poisons. And we find in this first book, this is actually a series, that Myrtle suspects that her neighbor has been murdered. Oh. Her neighbor is an old spinster lady who's just kind of a curmudgeon.
Okay.
But she is a famous gardener, is known for her lilies. And supposedly she has a very special lily called the gilded lily, which is worth a lot of money. But Myrtle notices a big hullabaloo next door. Well, actually, no. She notices that nobody next door is doing what they normally do.
Okay.
And it concerns her, so she just calls the police.
Oh, great.
And when the police come, they found her neighbor in the bathtub dead.
Oh.
So this mystery then goes from there. And it's just a straightforward mystery. You're talking about middle grade, so it's not going to be too complicated. What I found so delightful, the characters are all absolutely wonderful, very unique. Myrtle's governess is extremely unique, probably just as smart as Myrtle or smarter, and is very encouraging for Myrtle and is just a great guide, moral compass for her. She's just really good. But Myrtle's dad is great, and there are all kinds of secondary characters that I really enjoyed. I loved the writing. I love the writing in this. There are footnotes, like there are in Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, where things are asterisked in the text, and then you'll see footnotes.
Oh, fun.
There's a great deal of humor, and it is just witty and wonderful. I spent a lot of time giggling and just, it's one of those books that you just want to hug. It's just so fun and delightful and wholesome. And when I finished, I just wanted to immediately pick up the second. This is a series. The titles are all murder related, like Premeditated, Myrtle. I forget what the second one is, but her name is in all of them. So if you are even remotely interested in middle grade and you like a murder mystery that isn't, of course, going to be gory or gritty or unbearably disgusting, and it focuses more on the actual murder and the characters in the story, I highly recommend this. It is just, like I said, charming, delightful. Yeah, great.
Okay.
Big hug of a book.
Okay. It sounds fun.
I actually think you would like it because I think you would really like the writing style.
Sure. And it almost sounds like it could be a companion to the Sammy Keys books I talked about in the fall.
Yes, different time frame. This is definitely historical fiction.
Sure.
I mean, they talk about bicycles being a new invention and the fact that you could wear bloomers. You didn't have to wear a skirt to ride them. And so very good. And there's a ton of character growth throughout the novel, which I love to see.
Yeah. Cool. That'll make it onto my list, I think, because sometimes I just need like an easygoing, swallow in a day, little fun mister.
Great palate cleanser. If you're reading a lot of serious, heavy stuff, fiction or nonfiction, this is a sweet little book to slide in between. It reads really fast. I think it was it even 300 pages? I don't even think it was 300 pages long. Okay.
Cool.
So highly recommend. This I did give 5 stars too.
Oh, sure.
Just because of the delight factor.
Gotcha. Cool.
Tell us about another book.
So my third one, I'm venturing into the nonfiction and or the memoirs.
Okay.
This next book is Everyone Assumes My Girlfriend is My Nurse by Shane Burcaw.
Okay.
Okay. This is Shane Burcaw's second book of collection of essays. His first one was titled Laughing at My Nightmare.
Oh, I've heard of that too.
Yes. That is also the name of his nonprofit organization.
Okay.
My Nightmare. Now, I'm going to get his diagnosis wrong, and I do apologize. It is a form of muscular dystrophy. and I forget what the actual diagnosis is, but simply he's been confined to a wheelchair since he was like 5 or 6.
Okay.
And has very limited movement of his body. And for a while, his prognosis was that he wouldn't even make it into his 20s. Because of my line of work, and I work with those with intellectual and developmental disabilities, I am always looking for material from self-advocates, people who have diagnoses but are able to speak for themselves and to join.
And to thrive.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and to even add to the conversation of, hey, you are helping us. This is how you are helping, or this is how you're not helping. Kind of that. And I have followed him and his now wife often online. They have a YouTube channel called Squirmy and Grubs.
Okay.
They're super cute together. In this collection of essays, he talks a lot about the things that he runs into being a disabled adult. If he's out with his girlfriend, they're on a date, and people ask if she's his mom or if she is his nurse, talking to her instead of to Shane. And I teach orientation at my job, and I'm constantly teaching my new hires that are new to this field of like, we are encouraging people to speak to our individuals and not through us. Talking a lot about accessibility in the world. So they went to New York City, and his wheelchair had a dying battery, and there were no outlets for them to plug it in, and what that meant in terms of accessibility. There's an essay he shares where they had a neighbor who was developing dementia and was attempting to enter their home, and it was just making him feel unsafe, and what it meant for him to feel unsafe and to fear that versus somebody like us, and what that looks like. So I found this to be very enlightening, and just I think it's an important read across the board. I will say that his humor is a little juvenile for me. Okay. I think I just tend to have, and I don't say this for any other reason, but like I think I tend to have a more mature sense of humor. Like I don't laugh at bathroom humor very often.
Right.
And that's a lot of what his humor is, because it's his way of making light of the situation. Like, how do you not make humor out of a pee bottle? Right. Like you just kind of have
a urinal.
to.
Yeah.
Right. So I did find that to be a little young, but I think it's an important read anyway.
Yeah. I've seen that around.
Yeah. It's good. It's really short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm always interested in getting perspectives from people whose life experiences are much different than my own. I'm going to talk about another book in our quarterly review about somebody who has lived a very different life from me that I found incredibly moving, frustrating, devastating, but hopeful too. So
now, this one was good. It is the second one. So he does talk a lot about, in this book, references some of his other essays. But you can definitely pick it up and read it on its own, and it's not a big deal.
Okay. Have to put that on my ever-expanding TBR list.
But I will say that if you're interested in maybe not reading but staying up to date with them, their YouTube channel is really cute.
Maybe we could put that in the show notes too.
Yeah, they're super cute. And what I just think is adorable is just seeing the relationship between him and his wife, Hannah. It is so genuine, and they make fun of each other. And like, it's just a really cute, healthy relationship.
That's great to see too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep. Okay. What do you have next?
I have my final book. This is a romance. And I think that's appropriate because I read it in February, and February is the month of love. Not because BookTube says so, just because it is.
It's February.
I'm not a huge romance reader. And generally when I read contemporary romance, I end up giving books 3 stars. Like there has to be something really wonderful, really engaging, really extra for me to give more than 3 stars to a contemporary romance. But I do enjoy historical romance. And one of my favorite historical romance writers right now is Mimi Matthews. And she has a series of companion novels called The Bells of London. And it's a group of 4 friends who are young women just trying to survive the marriage market and find husbands. The season, yeah. Find husbands or not. Yeah. And just be who they want to be in a society where, again, really limits women in what they can do and what they can be. The book that I want to talk about is the third in the series. It's called The Lily of Ludgate. The first two books are The Siren of Sussex and The Belle of Belgrave Square. They are companion novels, but you almost have to read them in order.
Sure.
Because it seems like every book that comes after the previous book pulls in parts of the previous book into the story. And that definitely happens in this one. So you would at least want to read The Belle of Belgrave Square before you read this. But I'm just going to say go ahead and do it because they're all great. I think The Belle of Belgrave Square is a marriage of convenience.
Right.
That's the trope.
About this one before.
Yeah. In this book, in The Lily of Ludgate, the trope is second chance romance, which we all know. I love a second chance romance. And it's also forced proximity. So they have to, there's a situation where they have to be together. So this book focuses on, what's her name? Lady Anne Deverell. She's kind of like the ringleader of the group of four girls. Okay, she's kind of I don't want to say the bossiest, but she's very confident.
Sure.
But she has pretty much removed herself from society. She's been in mourning for 6 years, along with her mother, because her father passed away. Her male counterpart, her partner, is Mr. Felix Hartford.
Oh.
They've been friends since they were children. They fell in love when they were teenagers, and then something happened. Her father died, and Felix he went away, not because her father died. He was doing something else.
Sure.
And when he came back, they had kind of a falling out. And this is not a miscommunication trope. It's just people being too young and immature to understand what each other is going through. And so they ended up ending their relationship, even though they were thinking they were going to get married.
Sure.
But because their families are friends, they have maintained this kind of tenuous friendship, even though there's this undercurrent of resentment, and you get the picture. Yeah. Okay. Well, there's a situation that happens in the book previous to this one, The Belle of Belgrave Square. And because of that situation, Anne Deverell needs Felix's help to do something. So she goes to him and asks him, and she needs him to take her somewhere. Okay. So that's where the close proximity comes into play. And of course, the rest of the story is them just working through their feelings and relationship and finally deciding they love each other. Yeah. Because this is a romance, so it's going to have a happily ever after. But the reason I love Mimi Matthews' books so much is they always take certain aspects of London society, and we're talking about mid-1800s now, Victorian era London, not Jane Austen. This is later. And takes a particular part of society and culture and talks about it. So in this book, her mother is really into like the supernatural, the mediums and ghosts and being able to talk to people beyond the grave because she misses her husband. But you get that whole tarot readings and all of that in this book.
Oh, interesting.
So it's an interesting look at that part of society. It also looks very closely at how women who rely on a man for their security and their wealth, what happens to them when that is taken away. Yeah. So these women, I mean, it's Lady Deverell, Anne Deverell. So she had a position in society. Yeah. Her father's estate is entailed away. So when he dies,
she doesn't get anything.
No. So you also get that part of it in here. So it's just really interesting. Mimi Matthews, at least in this series, is writing mostly closed door.
Okay.
But don't take that to mean there's no sexual innuendo or chemistry or tension. Okay. There is that. There's just not a whole lot of actual physical things going on the page.
I'm so tired of that.
Yeah. I mean, there's kissing, but
I don't want to know what happens.
You don't have to. You're not getting the detailed descriptions of what's going on with two people in the bedroom.
I don't want that.
Yeah, you won't get that here. I don't want that. So I recommend the whole series, and I recommend that you read the series in order. But this is a great addition to the series.
Speaking of, I think I need the first one because I have the Belle, but I you said not to read that till I get the first one.
Right. You need the Siren of Sussex
so I
first.
think I need to get that before I leave.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's my last suggestion. This was definitely more than a 4-star read for me. Okay. I always enjoy her books. She has many series. I think she has standalones too. So I would just recommend readers, if you like romance, if you like historical romance, and you're not really interested in the hardcore open door, tell me every little thing they're doing in the bedroom type of romance, this would be a good way to go.
Sure.
Yeah, she's good.
Okay. I'm excited to get in that series because I've been so burnt by romances recently that I just want something sweet.
Yes. Yeah. That's exact. Although they do deal with hard-hitting topics. Sure. Each one of them does. But the overall feel of the story is just charming, romantic, people working through relationships.
Right. I don't want saccharine. I want...
Yeah. And there's no insta-love. You're not going to get insta-love anywhere. You do get a little bit of like insta-lust in the first book. Just like people see each other and think, that person's for me.
I wonder if
but that's
more,
not insta-love.
But that's more relatable than insta-love.
Oh, I agree 100%. I think there is love lust at first sight. I don't think there's love at first sight, but I think you can be very attracted to somebody the first time you see them.
Yeah, this is true.
Okay, that's enough explanation for The Lily of Ludgate by Mimi Matthews.
Okay.
What's your last book you want to tell us about, Julia?
My last one is Snow and Rose.
Okay, so another middle grade.
Yes.
Or is it middle grade? I think it is. Like borderline middle grade YA, maybe?
I don't know.
Huh.
Maybe.
Okay.
Because it's a fairy tale.
Right.
But I don't know if it's supposed to be written like YA or
I think it's middle grade, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I didn't mean to intrude.
No,
Please tell us about your book.
This is by Emily Winfield Martin. And she wrote this story and she also illustrated it herself. And the illustrations are just so lovely. But it's the story of two sisters, Snow and Rose. Rose being the eldest and Snow being the youngest. And they lived in this beautiful home with a beautiful garden that was built for just the two of them. And then their father goes missing. Mm-hmm. And they are asked to leave, forced out of their beautiful house because same situation, mom couldn't afford it by herself. And they end up in this little cottage in the forest and things start happening. Mm-hmm. What I really liked about this story was that there was a very interesting examination on grief.
Yes.
Right? Because the sisters had two very different experiences or expectations of life without their father and how to navigate that and how to be within that.
Doesn't the mother really struggle too?
She struggles hard.
Yes. Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah. But if you're into cottagecore, this book is fabulous because of the illustrations. They're just very cottage cozy. One of the scenes that I liked the most in this book was there is a little place called a library, but it doesn't operate with books. It's with little items and instruments, and the librarian is just a chaotic person, but she always says, everything has a story, so the item you have is a story, go find it. Mm-hmm. And I just thought that was so cool because books are stories, yes. But and as an example, I wear 80% secondhand clothing. Mm-hmm. So this sweater has a story to it. And I just think that that's so cool thinking about storytelling in a whole different phrase than just words or this happened and plot and all of that. I just thought that was super cool.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah. And this was fun because I read it right before a big snowstorm. So I got to be all cozy in my bubble bath reading this book as it started to snow outside. It was a fabulous one.
It does have snow in it, doesn't it?
At some point. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, this is delightful. I read this last year, I think, and I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's another one of those just heartwarming hug of a book that you just feel good when you finish reading it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a definitive dark undercurrent to it, but it's an undercurrent. It doesn't come up, it doesn't bubble up very often throughout the story. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Yeah. So this one was lovely.
Yep. Well, I'm glad we got to share some of our are good reads from the last couple of months. I just don't know how I would have ever picked through all of them. And it's still only the beginning of March. And I just feel like I am in such a groove with my reading that I may still have a hard time picking when we do our quarterly review.
I have mine picked, but I'm in the middle of a book right now that has the potential to make it on there too. And then I'm going to be so confused about what I'm doing.
Oh yeah, what are you reading right now?
I have just started Elizabeth by Margaret George.
Okay.
It is my challenge for March, and I'm very excited. I started it the other night, and I'm already almost 100 pages in it. Like, it's grabbed me, and I just want to sit down and keep reading it. And it is a chunk of a book, too. It's like almost 700 pages.
I read a book by her. She's an older writer. Like, she is not new.
No.
She would be way, like,
before
vintage.
Me.
Yeah. She wrote a book about Helen of Troy that I remember reading. I got it at the library one time when I took you guys, you were really little. And I just remember she had such a way of writing place.
Yes.
I just felt like I was right there, right in Troy with Helen, and all the drama, but the palace, and it was wonderful.
Yeah.
So I hope that you have that. I can't imagine why you wouldn't have that same experience with.
Yeah.
Well, and you like the Tudor time period,
I
so
do.
that will really work out.
And I really like the Elizabeth movies with Kate Blanchett as well.
Yeah.
And that's been really helping me understand who the characters are, because I've seen that movie a number of times. And so I know who's playing who. Like, I know that Geoffrey Rush plays Walsingham, who is the spy master.
Yeah.
So whenever Walsingham comes up, I'm like, oh, I know who that is.
Yeah.
Or Robert Dudley, I know who he was because of these. So, like, I'm really enjoying it so
and you
far.
can even picture them in your head as the actors. Yeah, that's helpful sometimes. Yeah.
Yes. I will say I'm very interested where the story's going, because it's starting off 30 years into her reign, with the Spanish Armada coming to England.
Okay.
And so I'm just very interested to see how the story's going to go, because that's quite a far time into her reign to be a 700-page book.
She's already covered a lot of territory in her life.
Yeah.
And in her reign as queen.
Right.
You'll have to tell me if you like it, because I had that book and I gave it away.
No, I took it from you.
Oh, did you?
Because you had it set up for a garage sale.
Oh,
I took that in Narnia.
That's what I mean. Yeah. Are you reading anything else, or is that your main focus right now?
I have 5 minutes left on an audiobook, but I'm not going to talk about that one because it's coming up in the
Three
review.
Peas in a Pod. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought we were talking about the 3 Peas in the Pod book.
No.
Okay. All right.
Which that one, I was like, where do I want to put this one? And I realized I can't talk about it yet. What are you reading, Mom?
I'm in the middle of 2 books.
Okay.
One I'm listening to and one I'm reading. I just started The Goblin Emperor by, I think it's Catherine Addison.
Mm-hmm.
I can't talk about it much because, like I said, I just started it. Mm-hmm. It is about a young prince who is half elf, half goblin.
Oh.
And he has been kind of hidden away. He was the son of the king's third wife. He didn't like his third wife. It was like a political alliance. And so they got married. They did the deed because they had to. And she ended up pregnant with this son. His name is Maya. And then the king and his other 3 sons are killed in an accident. So this Maya ends up being king. He's totally unprepared, has not really been educated, has no knowledge of court politics, and he's finding himself in a very difficult place. Yeah. So I have been enjoying it. I'm a couple chapters in. I really like Maya. He's almost like a cinnamon roll. Aww. He's very kind. He cares about people. He cares about he cares about his subjects, even though he never thought he was going to be king. This is kind of steampunky because there are airships.
Oh, fun.
So I'm struggling to get an idea of what the world is like, but I'm hoping that gets clarified as I read through. Several of the fantasy YouTubers that I follow really like this book, especially the women YouTubers who are fantasy lovers. So I'm thinking I will probably like this.
Well, but also fae right now is a huge thing for women readers, specifically my age women readers.
Yeah. And his kingdom is Fae.
Yeah.
The goblin part of it. Now, there are goblins that live in the kingdom, but his mother came from outside, from a kingdom next door. I think, like, all of this is still
New.
a little fuzzy for me.
Yeah.
The names and the place names are
wild,
crazy.
Yeah.
So, you know what? I'm skipping. I'm skimming. Like to me, that's not that important story.
Right. It's like what, reading Aragon or like some of these others where you're just like,
okay,
so-and-so did X, Y, and Z.
I mean, this book starts out with a whole explanation on how to pronounce the names.
Jeez.
And I read part of it, and then you have this whole list of names and places. I was just like, eh.
Which, okay, kudos to the authors because that does create a good sense of culture.
Right.
But also, it's a little pretentious.
Well,
I want to be able to read your characters.
It could be off-putting, too, for people who aren't used to that. If they're not used to fantasy and they see all that, they think, what in the heck am I getting into?
Right. And I always make the joke with this about like, so when I was doing my Bible study with friends a couple years ago and we would read sections of the Bible out loud, I would have friends that we would be reading through Exodus or the Chronicles, and then they were just like, person A, here's person B, and here's person C. Like they wouldn't even bother reading the names out loud.
Yeah. Well, that's really how I am with this book. I don't think it's going to detract at all from my enjoyment. And I'm surprised at how much I am enjoying the political intrigue of it. So we'll see. I am doing a reading challenge. I said I wasn't going to do one this year, but in January, I really struggled to pick up a book. I just was not motivated. I couldn't decide what I wanted to read. Left to my own devices and being a mood reader, I didn't know what mood I was in. So I am doing one little reading challenge. It's just a 12 book reading challenge. And I picked up The Goblin Emperor because the reading challenge is called In Case You Missed It. And it does years 2012 up to 2023. And you just pick a book published in that year for each month. So January was 2012, February was 2013, March is 2014. I'm not doing a very good job at all explaining this, but anyway.
But it makes sense. I think I know what you're saying.
The only reason I really picked up The Goblin Emperor is it was published in 2014, and that's the March year that I'm focusing on. So anyway, Goblin Emperor by Catherine Addison. And then I am listening to another book I talked about in our upcoming new releases that we were excited about. I talked about The Foxwife by Yang-Shi Chu, which is a story that kind of investigates the myth of the fox gods of the Chinese mythology. Based specifically in the northeast part of China. So we're talking about Mongolia, close to Russia, in the grasslands and the steppe of China. I am loving this. Yang-Shi Chu, she narrates the story as well as wrote it. She's doing a fabulous job. It's kind of a slow read. It's not, it's a mystery. I'm stumbling over my words. It's a mystery. There are two different storylines, but they are going to converge, I can tell. And one of our main characters is a fox. She's not a fox god, but she's a fox spirit. So she can change from fox to woman and back again. She's extremely enticing, not on purpose. It's just who she is when she is in her human form. She's a beautiful young woman, and she just tends to, men are just drawn to her. And then that's her storyline. And then there's the storyline of an older detective who is investigating a death. And their storylines are going to converge. But you're getting all this mythology, all this Chinese culture and custom. We're also going to go to Japan, so we're going to get some of that mixed in as well. And it has just been wonderful. I am doing it slowly. I never listen to my audiobooks very fast. The fastest I ever do is 1.5 times normal speed. But I'm listening to this at like 1.2. And I just don't want to rush because I'm just enjoying it so much. This has the potential
to be up there.
Yeah. Really, it really does.
How long is that one? Like, do you think it's going to make it into the review or like?
Yeah, it could. It potentially could. But since I talked about it a little bit here, I don't know if I will talk about it. We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
I mean, if it blows my socks off,
Well, then
we're definitely going to talk about it. I think it's 11 or 12 hours long.
Oh,
and I'm about halfway through.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's my reading right now. I'm doing a reading challenge, which I wasn't doing before.
I'm not surprised.
I guess I should say it's the Book Girls Guide is doing it. They do a yearly reading challenge every year, and they rerun all their past reading challenges and then add a new one. So this is in case you missed it, and it's just a year. You pick a book published in the year that's related to the month. So like I said, January was 2012, February 2013, March 2014.
And so on and so forth.
And so on. Yeah, all the way to December.
Yep. So then December is going to be a book this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Interesting how they're playing that. Okay.
Yeah, so it goes from January to December. I think December is 2023. I'm pretty sure 2022, 2023.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take the time to figure it out now. But
my brain's tapping out here.
I should say I'm using this reading challenge to once again work through my own TBR. Plus then all of the extra little things like in March Mystery Madness and Middle Grade March, I'm only pulling from my shelves to do those.
Yeah.
To do those prompts. And any others that I run across throughout the year.
Sure. Cool.
Anything you want to add, Julia? No?
No, I'm excited to talk about my books in the review.
I know.
Some of my books are like spectacular.
Yes, I feel the same way. And I have had some great nonfiction reading so far this year. Like I started a commonplace book, and one of my nonfiction books, I just filled up page after page of quotes because it was so good. So anyway, I think we're going to have a good quarterly review too. This will give you just an idea of how good it's going to be because these books, I think here are so good. Yours sound so good, and I can testify. Yeah. Mine were good. Well, listeners and friends, thanks for joining us today while we gushed about some good books. I hope that we have gotten you excited to pick up a couple of these, and we would love to hear if you're interested in reading any of the books that we talked about, or if you have some great reads of your own that you want to share. Because you know me, I'm happy to add more books to my TBR.
Yeah.
Before we close out, I just want to let you know that up next here in the Book Snug is our next 3 Peas in a Pod chapter. It's our first one for 2024. And we will be talking about Outside by Ragnar Jonasson, who is an Icelandic mystery thriller writer. So this will be a translated book. And it was chosen by our very special guest, who we will introduce to you in the next chapter. Yes. If you would like to read the book, you still have time.
It's a short listen.
Yes, or a short read. I think it's under 300 pages. I'm pretty sure it is. It's like 260, 270.
Yeah, the listening to it is less than 6 hours.
Yes. We will be discussing it in our next chapter. And that will happen on March 20th. And then we will follow that episode with our quarterly review for January, February, and March of 2024. So that will be our first episode in April. As always, if you are enjoying your time with us, we would love to have you rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That gives us some feedback. It allows us some information. It gives us some information to tell us if we're doing a good job or maybe what we could work on. We appreciate all of the ratings that you have given us so far. And thank you for being so kind and generous in your ratings and reviews. We appreciate that too. By rating and reviewing us, it just helps the algorithm place us in a more visible position.
Yeah.
So that's all it does. If you don't feel that you want to do that, no harm, no foul. We're just glad you're here with us and thankful that you're spending time with us in the Book Snug.
And can I say to all of our international listeners, we're so excited that you're here.
Yes.
I think when we started this podcast, we never once thought how far it would reach.
Yeah.
And it is so I find it so exciting that every time we look at the statistics of our episodes to see how far around the world that our podcast has reached. Yeah. So all of our international listeners, if I could say hello in all the languages, I would. But I just wanted to personally say hi and welcome, and we're so glad you're here.
Yes. And that's not to say that we are not incredibly thankful that our United States listeners are joining us. We are so thankful that you're here too. Thank you for spending part of your day with us here in the Book Snug. We'd love to have you join us again in the next chapter where we do our 3 Ps in the pod.
Bye, friends. We'd love for you to continue today's conversation with us at the BookSnug_podcast on Instagram and at the BookSnug podcast on Facebook. All of our episodes can be found wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as at our website, thebooksnugpodcast.buzzsprout.com, where show notes for every episode can be found. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at thebooksnugpodcast@gmail.com.
As C.S. Lewis, one of our favorite authors, famously said, "You can never have a cup of tea large enough or a book long enough to suit me." And we wholeheartedly agree.